Good afternoon, friends. It's the 26th of March. Um, let's talk about the peace process. Well, I'll state, first of all, my position on it. I'm against any kind of ceasefire. Uh, War shall go on until negotiations have completed and a solid peace plan is implemented, and not a second earlier. And there's no way that this can be done with Zelensky in power. Let's just begin with that. Nor do I trust any of the Europeans, except for Orban, except for Fico. But neither of those gentlemen hold a lot of power in the EU. Now, first of all, out of the three parties involved in these peace talks, Europe is not one of them. So you have Zelensky, you have Putin, and you have Trump. Only one party is really interested in, well, seems to be really interested in getting this kind of some kind of a peace deal, and that's Trump. Even though, as someone who is not neutral, is arming one of those parties, is giving them information, satellite information. It's hard to say that this party is really out for peace, but we'll entertain the notion that possibly maybe they are in some form or another. Russia doesn't need a ceasefire under any circumstances. Complete peace with a security infrastructure that's enforced. That's one thing. Peace through a ceasefire, that's not peace. Especially when we're winning. The other party involved in this case, Zelensky, also doesn't want any kind of peace. What they need is a bigger war. They need Europe in this war fighting now. Even as the EU / NATO is trying to use them to stay on the battlefield while they rearm and prepare for a big war with Russia. Believe me, the people that are spending the money and rearming, the people who are talking about it, believe them. They may not have the capability now, but if the moment they feel they do, they'll more than likely act. So it usually runs. Nobody would have believed Mein Kampf 2. Badly written insanity. Yeah, well, turned out to be the roadmap forward. So Zelensky, while being forced, is doing everything possible not to come to any kind of a ceasefire. So the first and only step right now on the ceasefire, we've had the limiting on, or actually a full stop on strikes on energy infrastructure. True, the Ukrainian energy infrastructure is in a horrid state. The big transformers that you don't see, you see in rows of transformers, those are pretty standardized transformers. So the big transformers in the buildings, usually right behind the rows of transformers, those are project built, hand built, hand assembled, very, very large, very expensive transformers. I think the U.S. makes less than 300 a year. Russia's about 120, 150 a year. So on. There's less than 1,000 of them that are made worldwide. And remember that the majority of them go by project order a year or 2 years in advance, either for a new plant that's being built or to replace one that's end of life somewhere else. So that's something to consider. I'm not sure why this camera is giving me a black eye. I do not have a black eye. Maybe it's the computer that's beside me, the light coming out the computer. I just noticed that my left eye looks black. I did not have a bruise. I didn't get in a fight with anybody. So that's, and I'm not sleep deprived. Though it's getting to that point where I need to go to sleep because I'm filming this at night. So anyways, I don't think the U.S. and the EU have anything to spare right now. to try to get the Ukrainian energy infrastructure up and running. But okay, Russia stopped. And the moment it stopped, it actually had 5 drones heading in for strikes, and they were suicided. So, Ukraine, on the other hand, has already carried out 3 hits, 3 strikes, or attempted strikes, since that ceasefire. First one was literally within an hour after the ceasefire went into effect. That was on the Kuban Kuban refinery. They hit one of the oil storage facilities or tanks, and it burned. Now, oil storage tanks are pretty easy to replace, all things considered. What would be much harder to replace is the piping. But getting hit in a refinery doesn't make a big spectacular picture, because most of that piping has valves, automated valves, and so as the pressure goes either too high or too low, the valves will cut off to prevent any further incidents. So there's not going to be a big burn. You hit an oil storage tank, and you get a big burn, a big fire that you can advertise as, look, we hit something. But again, it's a very limited pinprick. They're relatively easy to replace. But, it's all PR. I mean, thankfully, it's all PR in this case. Second attack was in Lugansk Oblast, and it was against the Svatovo gas distribution center. Maybe that was actually the third attack, because Suzdal, in Kursk Oblast, the Ukrainians hit one of the gas pumping stations with artillery. Okay, true, the gas line is shut off, but they did hit it. And in Crimea, air defenses destroyed another attempt to hit underground storage facilities by the name of Glebayovska. So, Putin so far is holding steady. Made threats that would back out of this, but so far hasn't. If anything, this is building the case of why you can't deal with these people. Because look, we stuck to our side, we stopped suicide of our drones, and these guys are every day trying to blow something up. Which is, by the way, the exact same thing that happened in Minsk 1 and Minsk 2. There was no freeze up of Ukrainian terrorism. And what was discovered when Russia came in full force and the OSCE ran off was that the OSCE was directly working with the Ukrainians. It was always suspected, because they never saw the Ukrainians firing, or if they visited any of the fortifications or any points that of the LNR DNR side, the moment they left, there would be a strike, because they were passing on information. It turned out the OSCE had cameras that were watching the front lines, and these remote camera feeds were going directly into the Ukrainian army. So there you go. Trust the Europeans. If you really don't want to live and you want your home burnt and your people murdered or enslaved, trust the Europeans. So anyways, now we're talking about grain deals. Now, the previous grain deal fell through, for those who don't remember, have very short memories, or never learned. The conditions of the grain deal were that Russian banks would be reconnected, the agricultural banks would be reconnected with SWIFT, that transfer of funds will go through them, Russian tankers with fertilizer, and Russia is the biggest producer of fertilizer in the world. Europe is suffering food inflation because its yields are going down. It can't afford to make its own fertilizer because gas is too expensive and make that fertilizer golden. and it can't import enough fertilizer. And those tankers would be able to go to European ports. They'd be covered by European insurance, which English insurance in this case. Which again, I don't see why we need, because we create our own insurance companies, and we're a direct threat to Lloyd's. Sure, we are, but Lloyd shouldn't have a monopoly. No one company should have a monopoly on worldwide trade. And that's exactly what they're creating through this insurance scheme of theirs. Their insurance is a financial investment. Their job is to collect money, not to pay it out. So anyways, I digress. And that anything going into Ukraine would be inspected by Erdogan, the least likely, the least trustworthy person in all of this, who tries to plunk his arse on every single stool he can find. Whether it's a Palestinian issue with the Israelis, whether it's Russia-Ukraine, or any other issue. This guy makes Macron look like he's stable and set in a foundation of cement instead of jello. So, of course, Erdogan did nothing. If anything, I think if they found any extra space in any of these tankers, they would have loaded them up with their own weapons even more. Funny, one of those grain tankers blew up in Odessa harbor. I guess somebody was screwing with the explosives or mishandling them. Plus, the Ukrainians were using the tankers, the grain transports, as staging grounds for drone attacks on Russia and the Russian ports. So they get further out to sea and then try to sneak in. That's what it was canceled on. We're back to that. And the sounds coming from Moscow are to an agreement that we'll try it again. Why? Because Washington, again, has said, yeah, we'll reconnect these banks to SWIFT, we'll do sanctions as soon as this goes into effect. Washington should never be trusted. And even if Trump wants it for real, it's the U.S. Congress that's got to lift the sanctions. Sanctions in the U.S. are easy to put on, and they're impossible to get rid of. Jackson-Vanik Act is a perfect example. The Jackson-Vanik Act was put on in the 70s to punish the Soviet Union for not allowing Jews to immigrate freely to Israel, even though tons of Jews did. It was removed, in about 2010. 20 years after the fall of the Soviet Union, and all the Jews that wanted to leave for Israel had left for Israel, and quite a few of actually, at that point, had come back to Russia. They didn't like the conditions in Israel. But the Jackson-Vanik Act stayed in place. So again, trusting the Americans, it's first you do it, then we'll do ours. Because the Americans like to do the opposite. Oh, yeah, you just start with yours and we'll go verify ours. Never. Let's not forget how chemical weapons were destroyed between Russia and the U.S. In other words, Russia destroyed its chemical weapons, and the U.S. kept stalling, and the final excuse of the white and fluffy, we're honest for freedom and truth and justice above everything else, American politicians. Yeah, I'm talking to all of you mega guys that actually still believe this crap. Russia breaks its promises. Right. And the final excuse from Washington was, we can't afford an incinerator to destroy the chemical weapons. Okay. Yeah. The country that spends, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars on figuring out if transgender cats will screw a gay dog in Malaysia can't afford an incinerator. Right. I personally don't trust Washington, don't trust London, don't trust any of them. Not as far as I can throw them. A lot of them are pretty heavy, so you can't really throw them too far. Do your steps first, and then we'll consider. And again, we'll come back to the same thing. How are these ships going to be inspected? Who's going to inspect these ships? Is it going to be Russia inspecting? Oh, no, that's bad. America inspecting by itself? What's the point? Who, the Turks again? You got to be kidding me. The only inspections that would be worth anything in this case would be a joint Russian-American inspection. That's the only case. Look, for those of you who think that I'm being, I don't know, untrusting, yeah, I do have trust issues. I'm not going to lie. The U.S. has a million miles to go to prove that it is trustworthy on anything it says. And Europe, as long as they're breathing, they're not trustworthy. There are very few European politicians of the second and third rank that can be trusted, and none in the first rank outside of Orban and outside of Fico. And even people like Gert Wilder, that came in there kind of pro-Russian, I'm going to start my country straight, they all sold out. Marie Le Pen sold out. Every one of them sold out. We'll see if Nigel Farage, if he ever gets to power, if he sells out. More than likely, probably. Chances are much better they sell out than they don't sell out. So, we'll see. Even McGregor over there in Ireland, if he ever gets to power. Again, we'll see. Very few actually stand up to the powers that be. So we'll see. We'll see. That's the situation we're at right now. Again, U.S. promising to, once this peace deal is in place, we'll get around to SWIFT and all that. It's a lie. It's a lie. Everything Washington says is a lie. Washington's words are hollow, empty, and satanic. The only thing you can do is judge them by their actions. And Trump, I don't think he could push it through if he wanted to. Maybe he does want to. I don't think he could push it through. Definitely not through Congress. But that should be the litmus test. Absolutely. And we don't need this. And what we need to do is to take Odessa and end this crap once and for all. Landlocked, dirt poor, stumbling Ukraine, what's left of it. That's what you should be. And if you think Kyiv is going to stay in Ukraine, Kyiv will secede. And I'll explain to you why. Kyiv is an imperial city. It's a capital. Even though Ukraine is dirt poor, well, it had the equivalent of French economy in 1991. 30 years of nonstop theft kind of does that to you. So even though Ukraine is dirt poor, poorer than Uganda, whose president was very, very aggravated when he was told that when Ukraine was compared to Uganda, on the level of Uganda, his statement was, no, we're much richer and better off than these people. And he's correct. So, except for, even though Ukraine is a dirt poor country, after everything's been pilfered, Kyiv was able to survive off that. Because all the oligarchs who each got a province to feed off of, they still had to give a lion's share out to Kyiv. So as an imperial city, Kyiv could survive as long as Ukraine was in the borders it was. Problem is, as a rump Ukraine, Kyiv becomes dirt poor, and it's not used to living dirt poor. The same problem was with Vienna, when the Austro-Hungarian Empire was destroyed and dismantled. Austria, an agrarian country, had to support an imperial capital, and it couldn't. That's why the Austrians were quite happy to join Germany and actually asked for it in 1918. Not anybody was going to grant Germany land after it had lost World War I. And that's why Austria was quite happy when one of its sons brought the German state to Austria and unified them before World War II started. So this is going to be the same thing. And for Kyiv, once tempers settle down, once poverty fully kicks in, and the nightclubs close and everything goes to crap on a large scale, Kyiv's going to have to decide, does it want to be a third-rate, decaying capital of a rump state run by psychopaths, very dirt poor psychopaths, or does it want to become the third, maybe fourth largest city in Russia and live well? And that's going to be a very interesting choice for these people. I'm thinking sooner or later they'll decide that better to be a third the third largest city in Russia, and live well that it'd be the slum capital of a shithole called Rump Ukraine that nobody wants anymore. It doesn't have a future, it doesn't have a demographic. Well, have you seen the commercials? The commercials that you see for 18-year-olds right now, 18 to 22-year-olds, they can't be drafted, but they're being actively coerced into joining. So Zelensky allowed them to be coerced, but they can't be drafted. So they're not draft in this case means press ganged. So to get these idiots to go die for Zelensky, they're being offered a million hryvnia, which I think is something like $300,000. And they're stupid enough to actually believe this. For one big batch of them was already killed off in Kursk. They were thrown into a hole in the line trying to hold it, and yeah, Darwin Award was given out to many with clusters. So these guys, the things they're being offered. I mean, these commercials are insane if you think about it. So a guy walks out of McDonald's, right? So do you know how many burgers you can buy with a million hryvnia? It's like you can feed yourself like 30 years on burgers for this much money. Another one is talking about you can buy 180 years of Netflix subscription if you sign up, and we'll give you that money. Third one commercial is even insaner. It's for some mass online role playing game, and you can buy a character and pay for him for like 100 years of play time. And I guess it works. It's incredible to watch, but I guess it works. Some of these idiots are signing up. Not that they're getting the money. You know, if they're lucky and they get out of this as missing just a limb or two, and they can sue a bankrupt government to give them their money. Maybe they'll get some pittance, but the dead won't get anything. And most of them are going to be dead anyway, so it's a pretty good bet on Zelensky's part. They're not going to have to pay. But they get the idiots in, the Darwin Award nominees. I mean, you're bribing people with hamburgers and Netflix. Seriously. So you realize what level your propaganda has collapsed as far as patriotism or anything of the sort when you have to bribe with McDonald's burgers and Netflix. But that also tells you what Ukraine as a society is. A society that has no basis. If things like hamburgers and Netflix and online game time is what gets people motivated to go fight a war and not anything higher. Not that I expect anything higher from a state like Ukraine, but So this is a pure American style materialistic society. It's interesting to watch. It's very interesting to watch. And this is what the Americans want everybody to be, just like that. And Ukraine is a fait accompli. They are a victory of American psychological manipulation. So they're all the little Americans and all those Ukrainian foreigners have ripped their way out and want to be just like everyone else. We'll go die for material things, nothing for anything higher. If they were fighting for anything higher, they'd probably turn their guns on Kyiv by now. So, yeah, just saying. Oh, geez, yeah, it's insane to watch all this. Absolutely insane to watch. Another thing, I've noticed this with Russian experts that I've been on different shows with. So I'm on a lot of these shows. Last one was on Tsargrad, last Friday, I think, last Thursday. And a lot of these experts, I think they're calming themselves. I think it's a calming reflex. Oh, it'll take Germany 20 years to rearm. Like, gentlemen, no, we don't have 20 years. If you think we're going to wait, if you think we have 20, we don't have 10 years. And let's look realistically, just a little bit, let's look realistically at history. Hitler comes to power in what, 33? 34? Consolidates. 39, World War II starts. Was Germany fully ready? No, it wasn't. However, the mass was creating a huge inflation bubble. So Hitler had no choice but to start the move. I think if he could have, he would have waited another year to 2 years. But anyways, within 5 years, Germany went from a much worse economic position than it is today, which much less developed industry. You got to remember, Germany in World War One manufactured 47 tanks or land ships. I mean, they're huge machines. They had 11 crew in them, but only 47. The Western Allies, in this case Britain and France, true, this includes tankettes, two-man little mini tanks, and the bigger tanks like the Mark One, the Mark was it threes. Um, they created about 4,000. So and this is with very underdeveloped machine manufacturing industries. They're just starting to really develop. I mean, cars were relatively rare in the countryside, and the cities they were much more spread out. This you're talking 1914. Um, Tractors, quite a few of those tractors were steam powered. So now they've got the tanks, slow, lumbering, but they were developing from scratch basically. So now you've gotten to, and the Germans had 47, so they had no real industry. I mean, these are handmade tanks. We're not talking an assembly line. Germany had a very small army. It trained in the Soviet Union. However, when Hitler came, those conditions were ended. But that was enough to get a corps. Germany has a corps right now, especially what calls up its reserve officers, reserve NCOs. So in 5 years, it could quite easily be on its feet or less. And they're looking at $1 trillion euro just for Germany. Now that's going to create huge inflation issues. They're going to be under the same pressure that Hitler was. But now they don't have to worry about their western frontier because the French and the English, the other two mutts in this Three Stooges outfit, are on their side. So no, I don't think we have 20 years. I don't think we have 10 years. 3 to 4 years at the best. And German industry, the military industrial sector, last year grew over 40%. Now you have Volkswagen saying, yeah, the plants we shuttered, Rheinmetall can use them. And I've also heard from other experts on different talk shows I've been on. Oh, you can't retool an automobile manufacturer to make tanks. Seriously? Have you ever been in an automobile manufacturing plant? Have you ever been in heavy industry? I've worked in heavy industry for quite a while. Oh, hell yes, you can. It's not going to take you a week. It's not going to take you a month. It may take you 3, 4, 5 months to do it, but it damn well can be done. And if you're talking about wheeled armored vehicles, something like Humvees or something like the larger SWAT mobiles, things like that, oh hell yeah, you can retool it, and pretty damn fast. Tanks are slower to retool because it's a big machine. It's a complicated machine, modern tanks. But absolutely you can retool it. You can retool anything. Trust me, especially if there's the money and the will. So all these experts saying this, I think it's a cope from the Russian side in this case for these experts, or what they call themselves experts. And Western experts have said this too. It's a coping mechanism, but it's not based in reality. The reality is we're going to have to deal with these people, and they are set on war. And since there are populations that mostly don't want war, are spineless, or too lazy, or too uninformed to do anything, they'll go fight because they're not going to be given a choice once war is declared. So that's the situation we're in right now. Me personally, I'll say it straight up. The front line needs to stop at a point where it's including Odessa, Nikolaev, Dnipropetrovsk, Kyiv, Sumy. Did I miss anything? I feel like I missed something. I probably did. It's late. So, Poltava. Yes, there you go, Poltava. All those areas need to be within the Russian border. And what's left? If the Poles want to fight the Banderites and take back their lands, since they have the deeds and all that, you're welcome to it. The Hungarians, I'm pretty damn sure Zakarpattia will leave, and the Slovaks can take a chunk. You know, hell, I'd even suggest Bessarabia giving that to the Moldovans if they can overthrow Myasandra and put somebody rational in charge, and they'll get a port on the Black Sea that way. And Trinestor just leaves for Russia. And everybody's happy. But we'll live and see. But that's the world according to Stas. So what we're going to get is, I don't know what we're going to get. But I have no trust in the West. And why would I? I've lived there long enough, half my life. I mean, Christ's sakes, in '99 we were preparing for war with Russia. And this is when I was in the 18th Airborne Corps headquarters. So, things changed? No, they haven't. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst, as they say. And maybe Trump really is sincere. You always hold out that little tiny bit of hope. I'm not betting anything on that, or even if he is, that he'd be allowed to do it. But until the Americans make the first move and they show that they're honest players, they're not honest players. They're just full of crap. And because I think Trump's the one that armed Ukraine, pardon if I don't have too much faith. But maybe I'll be proven wrong. Hopefully I'll be proven wrong. We'll live and see. God bless.